Welcome to week 5. This week we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics in infant and toddler development, and that is motor development. So motor development means the development of how infants and toddlers are able to move their bodies. There's two types, or in early childhood we talk about two types of motor development: fine motor development and gross motor development. So fine motor development is like what you do with your fingers, what you're able to do with your fingers, those kind of small movements. Also your eyes, ability to look back and forth, up and down, that sort of thing. Those are small muscle movements, and that's called fine motor development. And gross motor development is the rest of it, moving our arms, our core, our legs. That's gross motor development. And now in development, gross motor development develops before fine motor development for the most part. Our gross motor development keeps developing while our fine motor development does too, but typically gross motor, large muscle skills and abilities occur first. So that's the biggest focus on motor development in infants and toddlers, is gross motor development. And so this is a favorite topic for mine because I think that this is one of the areas that the general public is most misinformed about. Okay? So the first thing I want to say is that motor development happens in generally the same order with most kids. And that order of development is called a developmental progression. One of the questions in your reading assignment, your reading reflection, is going to be about development. What is the developmental progression of motor development? And that's because it's not like, oh, some kids learn how to sit up and then they crawl and then they walk and then they roll over, right? No, that's not how it works. Unless a child has some sort of physical disability, and there's all sorts of differences in development. There's a whole range of kids with special needs, and that can apply to motor development as well. But for this topic, in this course, we're going to be thinking about typically developing kids. Most kids are typically developing. That's why it's called typical development, is because most kids, that's how they develop. So in typically developing kids, everybody needs to learn how to roll over before they can learn how to crawl. It's just the muscles that are necessary to roll over, that muscle develops first before the muscles develop so that an infant can crawl. It has to go in that order. And it's the same. Kids crawl before they can walk. Now, there's going to be people in this class that know kids who never crawled, and that does happen. But left to their own to develop their motor skills naturally, most kids would crawl, and that would happen before they walk, okay? There are some kids who don't, and that's okay, but for the most part, kids crawl before they walk. So there's a developmental progression. There's an order that these things need to come in. And the book talks about that a little bit, but there's a video I'm going to have you watch that talks about it more. Okay? The order for the general big gross motor movement goes like this. Kids roll over. Then they sit or crawl. Some kids sit first, some kids crawl first. A lot of time it happens right at the same time. Then they pull up on something and then they walk. That's the order. Now, a lot of kids sit up before they crawl, and that is because in the United States, it is very, very common for people to take babies, make them sit up, and kind of prop them up with stuff, right? Either they have them sitting in some sort of like extra saucer or something, or they get them to sit up on the floor and they kind of like put a boppy or pillows around them so that they don't fall over. There's a difference, however, between being able to sit and being able to get into a sitting position on their own. So being able to get into a sitting position and out of a sitting position on their own happens at about the same time as the child learns to crawl. Do you see the difference? Taking a baby and making them sit and propping them up, or not necessarily in propping them up, but putting them in the position to sit and then waiting till they either tip over or until you take them out of the position to sit is different than the skill of the baby being on the floor, pushing their body up from the floor and getting into that sitting position by themselves. So those are two different skills. If we never propped a baby up to sit, if we never put a baby in a sitting position until they could get into that position on their own, I think that we would see more kids developing their sitting and their crawling at the exact same time. My daughters. So reading the book, watching the videos, and listening to me, you will learn that a lot of developmental specialists do not recommend propping a baby up to sit. So when I had my babies, my mother-in-law takes care of them, my husband takes care of them, and my mother takes care of them, in addition to me. Although when they were babies, primarily it was me. It's my policy to not dictate how other people take care of my children, because I wouldn't leave them with them if I didn't trust their judgment. And I know, because I was a child care provider for so many years, that it's super annoying. I don't want to say, annoying is not a kind thing to say, but when you're taking care of other people's children and they've given you a lot of directions about how they want you to do it, it can be really hard because you're the one with the kid and you're using your best judgment about how to do it. And if there's too much outside input, it makes it hard. So I decided not to do that to the people taking care of my children. I wanted them to be able to take care of them the way that they thought was best. But the one thing that I said, please, please, please do not do is please do not prop my babies up to sit. I did not want them to have that experience of being propped up. I did not want them to have the experience of sitting up and kind of wobbling and then tipping over. That's scary. I didn't want them to have that experience. And then also, I just was really curious because all the reading I've done says don't prop babies up, but I have never, ever taken care of a child in a group care setting, or any child in any way, or babysitting, anything. I've never met a child who hadn't been propped up, ever. I never met anyone who hadn't done that to their child. So I just wanted to see it. I was really curious. I wanted to see the first time my baby sat for them to have put themselves in that position themselves and figured that out for themselves. I wanted to see that. I wanted them to have that experience. So nobody propped up my babies. Nobody sat my babies up. And it means that they did not learn to sit until they were like 10 and 11 months old. They took forever to learn to sit. But you know what? They sat and they crawled within the same week of each other. So Ruby, I have twins. Ruby sat up first at 10 months old and crawled like 2 days later. Ivy, I think maybe crawled and then sat up, but at about 11 months old. So they spent a lot of time on their bellies, a lot of time. And they were really happy on their bellies. They were strong. They were good at tummy time because they didn't know about sitting up. They just didn't know about sitting up. And so a lot of babies, once you show them that they can sit up, they only want to sit up. And then they cry and they're not happy unless you sit them up. But there's so much work, strength work for them to do on their bellies. And that's why a lot of kids skip crawling, is because they sit up before they're ready to sit up. They like it so much, and then they don't want to spend any time on their tummies strengthening those arms. And if they do not strengthen their arms and their core, they aren't going to be able to crawl. And so then they figure out some other way. Some kids go from sitting to pulling themselves up and then walking, and they skip crawling. And it's not the design of development. The design of development is to do these. Learn how to sit on your own so that you can crawl and then pull up and then walk. So I feel really strongly about it. I'm happy to have conversations with you. I know that all of you who have children propped up your babies, because everybody props their babies up to sit. Everybody. So don't feel bad about it, because everybody does it. But just think of what I'm asking you this week is to just think about it. Think about, is that what is the most optimal experience for an infant to have? Or would it be more optimal for them to just be in a natural, laying on the floor, on their belly, on their back position, and then to find that sitting on their own? Man, my girls were excited when they could sit up. Man, they were excited. And you know what? They never tipped over and hit their head. Never, not once. Because they didn't get into a sitting position until they were able to, had core strength to be in the sitting position. So I could go on and on about this. This video is already 10.5 minutes long. I feel really strongly about it. You're going to get a lot of strong opinions this week about this stuff. My request is to not get defensive and to just really take these opinions and really think about them and just kind of open yourself up to them and see if they make sense. And if they don't, if you at the end you don't agree with these ideas, that's your prerogative. But please try them on and don't get defensive, because everybody props their baby up. So many people use exercisers, so many people use jumperoos, and you're gonna hear the rest of the module that those aren't good either. So anyways, try to be open-minded this week and take in some of these new ideas. Okay, thanks.